Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hey there, everybody. Thanks for tuning in again, and welcome to the Weekly Roar. Hey, I'm glad to see you guys came back into the Lion's Den for this week's watch party. Now, this week, we're talking about another concept in the foundations of leadership. But before we jump into today's topic, I'm Greg Storch. My business is called Lion Enterprise. It's a leadership development and coaching business. I'm a certified professional coach and a certified leadership speaker and trainer. Now, last week, I continued my series called Follow the Leader, Concepts in the Foundations of Leadership. And I spoke about how true the saying is that birds of a feather flock together. We attract people to us who are most like us. It's really something that leaders have to be aware of, because you don't want to have an entire organization of people who are carbon copies of you. You need to have diversity. So understanding that you attract who you are will allow you to put forth a concerted effort to hire the people who can actually fill in your own gaps. Listen, if you didn't catch it, just go back to my website at www.lion-enterprise.com. Click on the Lion's Pride Library up at the top of the page. You're going to see all my videos in the Lion's Pride Library, and you can watch them 24/7, 365. All right, you guys, let's go ahead and get things kicked off for another Weekly Roar. Today's concept is one that is near and dear to my heart. Now, as leaders, we can never hesitate to initiate. We have to go to our people and reach out to them. Don't ever let your ego get in the way and make you believe that your people should be coming to you. Nope. You need to go where they are. So, how exactly do leaders influence others? How do they get them to do what they need them to do? You have to make a connection with those who are there to help you achieve your mission. As much as they need you to chart the course, you need them to be able to connect with you. Why? Well, I'm going to use a quote from John C. Maxwell, because I feel like he said it best when he said, "You can't move people to action unless you first move them with emotion. The heart comes before the head." John's exactly right. You have to connect with people emotionally. And there it is. You know, over the past few years, you probably have been hearing all of this talk about emotional intelligence. Leaders have been learning more and more about emotional intelligence in the recent past. And there's a reason why it's so important. People naturally want to belong. They want to feel like they're part of the group. And they do when they feel like they are connecting with you. Now, listen, when I say connect, I'm talking about taking our communication to the next level. The stronger you make the relationship with your teams and the people on them, or whoever is following you, maybe you aren't thinking of this in the context of a work scenario. Maybe you're the leader of your family, and the followers I'm talking about are your spouse and your children. But the stronger the relationship you forge with them, the people that are following you, the more likely they are to want to help you and do what you require of them. Okay, so I keep saying this word connection. When I'm talking about connection, what I'm really saying is that we're going to have to shift our focus away from ourselves and place that focus on others. Yes, you're going to have to become selfless. So, if you want to get better at leading people, learn how to connect with them. Meet them at an emotional level first. Show you care about them. I mean, genuinely care about them. They need to see that you respect them and that you see them as human beings, not just resources to get a job done or to achieve that next milestone. They need to see that you care about them as people. You know, this is kind of one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of the title human resources. I know employees are technically resources when you're talking about it from a business perspective or a business model, right? Especially from a finance cost center perspective. Yes, they can be seen as resources. But the minute that you start treating them like a case of paper or a box of paper clips or a pad of sticky notes, then you'll never be able to lead them because you're never going to connect with them. Sometimes this doesn't really come naturally to people. It takes practice. And sometimes bosses or managers think that they shouldn't get friendly with their people. Man, nothing could be further from the truth. Don't be afraid of that. Let me tell you a little story to illustrate what I'm trying to talk about here. When I promoted to become the program manager of that IT contract that I ran in DC several years ago, I had to hire my replacement as the operations manager first. So I reached out to a friend of mine who served with me in the Navy. Now, I was telling her about all the requirements of the position and what the job was like, and she just said, I don't think I can do that. You see, she was in the dental sales industry, and she had been for years since she got out of the Navy. That's what she did, and she was great at it. She was, I think, the regional manager or the national sales manager for a company based down under. Now, she didn't have a background in information technology at all. Admittedly, she didn't know the first thing about running the daily operations of a large IT contract that was delivering IT services to a federal customer. She wasn't even ever in the federal space. So, of course, she thought I was crazy for even speaking to her about this job opportunity. But I knew what was really needed. I understood that the technical piece she would need, she'd pick that up on the job. How did I know that? Because I did the same thing. I didn't come from a technical background, but growing up in that industry and learning, I was able to develop the talk. And that's what helped me communicate on the technical side. But the thing is, what she did have was great customer service skills and the ability to connect with people. She just had to translate those skills into a new industry. She ended up taking the position, and I was her mentor for the first year. She was phenomenal. I would say she was a natural. The teams loved her, and so did our customer. She became almost like a mother to more than 150 contractors. How? because she would do things like bake them their favorite dishes. She kept them fed, and she knew all of them on a personal level. She knew their names. She knew a little bit about them. She could tell you at least one personal fact about all 150 people on that contract. Now, before my own personal growth journey started, I actually subscribed to the belief that there was a line between the boss, the work relationship, and having friendships. And I didn't believe you could be friendly with your staff. And maybe to a certain extent, that might be true. Okay. There is a fine line. At the end of the day, when something needs to get done, you are the boss and the employees are the employees, right? I get that. But what I later learned was that I was wrong. I was wrong in that approach. You know, I got to tell you, I was beginning to think that she was getting too personal with the employees. You know, what set me off one year was when I learned that she had invited the manager of one of the teams to come to her house for Thanksgiving dinner. Now, I'm not going to lie, I didn't like that at all. I felt like she was showing favoritism, and that can be a morale killer. But there was a reason why she invited that manager to her house. Now, she started bringing in different dishes each week and feeding the team. She would leave them out on the tables and they would just come by and grab a plate. And she even bought a coffee maker and set it up on her table. And she would pay, I mean, the pods that this coffee maker took were not cheap. And she would buy them and she would leave them out for everybody to use. She would bring them, but come by my desk and have an espresso. Or she would bring in breakfast to the morning managers meeting. She was doing a lot of things that I'm going to talk about in just a second that helped her to connect with the teams that she needed in order to get her job done. She knew what their favorite foods were. She knew when there was a death in their family or when they were celebrating a birthday or a graduation from college. You know, I think I've caught myself on many occasions saying that she ended up being a far better ops manager than I ever was. And I was pretty good. Why? Because everybody on that contract loved her, because she was able to connect with them on an emotional level. And that in turn made them want to go above and beyond for her. They would do anything she would ask. They were connected with her. Okay, so maybe you're scaling yourself right now on a scale of 1 to 10 on your ability to connect with other people. Say you're not as strong as you want to be. If that's the case, let's talk about how you can get better and improve your ability to lead others. First of all, everything always has to start with us. You have to add value to yourself before you can add value to others. You also need to understand yourself before you can understand others. You have to know who you are before you can get to know who they are. Make sense? So start with yourself. Be confident in who you are, and more importantly, be authentic. Don't be someone you think you need to be because of a title or a position. Just be yourself. I have a great example of this. It was one of those defining moments, I think, in my role as the ops manager before I brought my friend in to take over once I got promoted. Imagine this. a large, huge empty floor room just filled with all these different cubicles, walls, half walls. You could see right over them. And they were connected in like 3 little triangles. And they had these little pods all over the room. And along the outside walls were, regular executive offices with the door and the windows, right? And then the floor was filled with these cubicles. That's what our workspace was like where I worked at that federal agency. Many of the technical teams, almost half of the entire contract team, sat in that area. Well, I put my desk out in that area. I was up against the far wall, and that's where I sat. I didn't take an office along the wall. Those were reserved for the feds. So when I first started, I remember having to ask questions about, what was happening. I was the ops manager. I needed to know what was going on. So I'd have questions, or maybe I needed to speak to a particular person. So one day that happened, and I remember scooting back my chair, and I actually stepped on my chair, stepped up on my desk, and I'm peering out over the top of my cubicle. Now imagine this. You're sitting at your cubicle desk and you look up, and there's this guy peering over, the ops manager, the second in command basically of this contract, standing on top of his desk, just staring out over all the cubicles. And I just yell out, "Hey, does anybody know?" Whatever. They loved it. And I was just being authentic. That was me. So I connected with them on that. That's what I'm talking about when I say that it's important to just be authentic. Should I have been doing that? Yes, because that's my style. But a lot of people would think, no, you are the ops manager. You should be setting an example for people, blah, blah, blah. I connected with them, and I got more done by doing that than sitting at my desk all prim and proper because I held a title or a certain position on that contract. That was my personality. I bring humor to situations, and that's what helps me to connect with other people, and it helped me to connect with them. So understand who you are and be authentic with people. The next thing that you have to do is be sincere. Be sincere with people. I think this is really what I meant when I was saying that you have to genuinely show people that you care about them. Sincerity is one of the most effective tools that we have to be able to connect with people. Okay, now here's a biggie. Leaders must absolutely, without a doubt, get to know their people. Leaders should be spending a lot of time walking around and talking to their people. And I don't mean standing around the water cooler having idle chit chat. Those conversations, your conversations with others, need to be focused on them. Learn their names. How many children do they have? Where are they living? Where are they originally from? Get to know them. Why is this so important for us as leaders? Because first of all, when your focus is on others, it sends a message that you genuinely care about them. And secondly, when you learn about others, you can find common ground. And common ground helps you to connect with other people. Maybe you come from a similar area, or maybe it's the same state as them. Maybe you have the same number of children they do. Maybe you went to the same college, or maybe you went to a rival college. Whatever it is, find some way of connecting, and that is going to help you to establish an emotional connection with those you want to lead. And then once you establish the emotional connection, you'll have the ability to gain their support. Hey, if you haven't picked up on this yet, you might notice a pattern here. I'm talking an awful lot about all the things a leader should be doing to establish a connection with their followers. I'm talking about all the things you have to do. You need to do this. You go out and do that. And you wouldn't be wrong about that one bit. I can't stress this point enough. Listen to me when I say, despite your position at the top of the pyramid, your position in the organization as a leader, or the perceived power you have based on your position, it is always our responsibility to initiate. That's why I called today's lesson, Don't Hesitate to Initiate. That's what I'm talking about. It's incumbent upon us as leaders to go to them. Don't you ever make them come to you. It's a losing proposition, and it's not going to end well. You have to go to where they are. Your focus has to stay on them and not yourself. Making a connection with others at the end of the day is extremely dependent on our ability to stop being selfish and start being selfless. If you have an ego, if you're narcissistic, you're going to have to get over yourself before you can ever start working on connecting with others. It's never going to happen. You'll lack the ability to focus on them instead of yourself. Now, I actually teach, and I've held masterminds on this, solely on the art of connecting. It's one of my favorite topics to teach. There's a lot to it, and it's way more than I could cover in a 30-minute weekly roar. But here's what we can do. Let's try to put this in practice starting this week. What I want you to do is start by thinking of someone that maybe you're just not jiving with. The effort to establish a relationship with them or a friendship is just not bearing any fruit for you. Maybe you want to try to strengthen a friendship or a relationship that you already have. This will work for that too. Okay, do you have that person in mind? If not, when this is over, take some time to think into this. Who might that be? Get that name in your head. Identify who this person is. And once you do, this week, I'm asking you to have a conversation with that person. Now, you might speak to this person all the time, but this time, I want you to be conscious of what you're saying in the discussion. I don't want this to be idle chit-chat about whatever. Okay, first of all, keep the conversation focused on them. Ask a question and then ask follow-up questions based on what they say. Okay, so here's an example. Maybe you go to them and you meet up in the break room with this person and you ask them, hey, what did you do this weekend? Listen to their answer. Maybe they say, oh, I went to a baseball game. Ask them more about that. As they speak, you need to actively listen to them and pick up on things that you might have in common ground, or maybe it's something that just resonates with you. Your spidey senses will tingle, it'll resonate, and you'll feel it. You'll be like, oh, maybe they mentioned going to a baseball game. And maybe you can briefly connect on that by acknowledging it and saying, oh, I love baseball, but that's it. Immediately turn the conversation back to focus on them. The only reason you say something about yourself is to make the connection. I love baseball. What's your team? Did you and your family go? What's your favorite part about baseball games? Turn the conversation back to focus on them. Do not allow it to stay focused on yourself. Don't go talking about how much you love baseball and who your favorite team is and all your childhood memories of baseball. Don't do that. Keep the conversation focused on them. Over the next few weeks, continue practicing on turning your focus away from yourself and onto the other person. Learn more about them by questions. I guarantee you, you're going to see a huge shift in the dynamics of the relationship or that friendship. As a matter of fact, if any of you actually do this little exercise I'm giving you, I'd love for you to come back in a few weeks to the Lion's Den Facebook page where we're watching this watch party. Make a post about it. Tell us what you observed by changing the focus of that conversation and maybe how you're seeing this relationship change. I'd love to hear about it. I'm promising you the dynamic will change once your focus changes. As a leader, when you learn the art of connecting with your people, the dynamics of your entire organization can change. It's an extremely powerful skill for leaders to develop. If you feel like you might not be that great at it right now, don't worry. Skills can be taught, learned, and improved. You have to work hard at connecting with other people. But once you master it, you'll never have problems with influencing others to do exactly what you need them to do. Why? Because you've touched their heart before you've asked for their hand. Whew. Okay, you guys, that's going to do it for me this week. Another concept in the foundations of leadership. I'm going to ask you another favor this week. Please, again, if you like what I'm talking about each week here, can you please do me a favor and share out my videos in your own groups? Share them with people you know that might resonate with what I'm talking about. I'd appreciate the share out. Help me get my message out there to more people. And if you do decide to share, put a note at the top of your post why you're sharing it out so people understand. All right. I appreciate you doing that. Thanks so much, you guys. What I do is after this watch party, I'll go back in and I'm going to repost a video link in a new post in the Lion's Den. That's the post that you can use to share out if you feel so inclined. Also, do not forget to leave your thoughts and comments down below in the comments section under the video and let me know what you think. I want to hear what you're thinking about the discussion. This is my opinion. It's not set in stone. These are my own thoughts about the concepts and the foundations of leadership. Maybe you agree. Maybe you don't. Let's share what we're talking about, because the worst thing that's going to happen is we're going to learn and grow. Thanks so much for tuning in again this week for another weekly roar. I appreciate you more than you know. Hey, I'm going to be back here again next week, same place, same time, to speak about another concept in the foundations of leadership. Next week, I'm talking about another subject that I've done talks on this before. I've spoken about this in the past, and I cannot wait to speak about the importance of our inner circle, the people who we surround ourselves with. You've probably heard this recent quote that we are the average of the 5 people closest to us. We're the average of those 5. I'm going to talk about why it's important to pay attention to the people that you're placing in that circle. You're not going to want to miss this one. Okay, everybody, until we meet again next week, I want you to remember, be powerful, but stay poised, just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.